All right. Hello. Welcome, everybody. This is Petra Lomaya, and this is the podcast from employee to entrepreneur. And I'm really glad that you're here. Welcome. This is episode number 7. And we're getting a little bit closer to the current date. And again, this is for employees who want to become entrepreneurs and who don't want to fall into all the potholes that I fell into. And also for people who do train entrepreneurs and don't quite I haven't quite worked with employees yet who become entrepreneurs because I used to be an employee, then I used to be a consultant, but very close to an kind of an employee relationship. It wasn't an employee relationship, but I only had a few clients at the top who kind of referred me on. So I'd never had to do really marketing and sales before. And if people haven't done marketing and sales before, they think in a different way than the usual entrepreneur would think because they really didn't have to think about a whole lot of issues that normal entrepreneurs think about. So this is hopefully helpful for everyone. If you're wondering why I'm standing in the middle of the woods again, um, well, I do have an office that I could work in, but I kind of got stuck in a very unique place during COVID-19, and the locals don't quite understand what I'm doing. So if I'm doing anything like a podcast or I'm doing, anything like a really important phone call or something, you always have people coming in and then standing in the back and just kind of taking a look at what you're doing, or they get really upset that you don't pay any attention for them, attention with them attention to them, and they get so upset that they then start demanding that attention, and then they get really really loud in the background and start laughing or send their kids in and stuff. And and also where I'm living itself, where I could do it, I've kind of become the local attraction since the tourists have come in, and I'm now called Petra Park because I've got a whole lot of things in my front yard that are very interesting for children. So the children come to me, and then the parents come to me, and then they all watch me, which is a little bit of a problem if you're doing a podcast like this. I've got like little rebounders in the front where they can, bounce up and down, all kinds of things. So I'm kind of hiding in the bushes here to do this kind of thing, but it's beautiful. It's a beautiful nature reserve, so it's really no loss. It's a little bit unfortunate that all these people who are coming to me, all the contact that I'm making, is all in Spanish, and they are not my clients. It's not that I have anything against the Spanish, but I don't really speak Spanish, so I cannot give them my products, which are all in English or in German, but usually in English. And also my Spanish is just not good enough. So that's why I'm not using this wonderful opportunity of making contact that I have at the moment. Now, what I wanted to go into today were several things. So we've done a whole lot of covered a lot of things that I've done in the past, on my little journey from employee to entrepreneur, or from consultant to entrepreneur, basically. And we've covered a whole lot of things as videos, making videos and websites and funnels and all kinds of things. You can take a look at the previous podcasts. What we're covering today is basically the preparation that I did during this whole time, while I was like preparing the zoo tour, for example. Also some DMing experience that I have with DMing, then a love challenge that I did. Then I took a look at a money job, actually, where I thought I could make some contacts, and the experience that I had there. Then affiliate marketing, and then live events again. And that will bring us almost to the present time, and then there will be one podcast more which will bring us to the present time. So let's start with the prep for the zoo tour and selling in general. So people may have noticed that and I'm just looking at my screen right now to make sure that this is still running. Yes, it is. People may have noticed that I've done quite a few things. I didn't just try one thing and stick with it. And especially employees will think, why on earth does she think she could have any kind of success if she keeps on doing different stuff? You have to be consistent. That's the mindset of the employee. Well, the problem is that every entrepreneur you listen to tells you something different, because they keep repeating this quote that Einstein apparently said, that if you the proof of madness is if you're trying the same thing hoping for a different result, right? So a lot of the entrepreneurs that you talk to, the mentors that you talk to, tell you, okay, so if something doesn't work, then you try something else, and that doesn't work, you try something else, if that doesn't work, you try something else. So that's what I've been doing, trying something else, trying something else, trying something else, because I was following the advice of my mentors, not because I'm naturally inconsistent or cannot stay with one thing. Because you don't want to stay with one thing if that obviously doesn't work and then keep doing that and it obviously doesn't work forever. But of course, there's a time and a place when to be consistent and when to not be. You know, when you have to try the same thing over and over again until you break through, and when you have to keep flexing your approach in order to find the right thing. So because initially I didn't know what the right thing was for me, what the right fit was for me, I kept flexing my approach. I kept trying to do the different things that different mentors, different coaches kept telling me to do. And of course, in marketing, that's is a bit of a difficult thing because every marketeer out there who will teach you marketing is also a marketeer for his own product, which means he wants to sell you his course. So of course, the guy who sells you the course how to write books and publish books tells you, "Oh, that's absolutely that's the best thing you could do, and you know you're going to get clients right away. It's got the social proof and stuff." Then you write the book and nothing happens, right? The next guy tells you, "Oh yeah, webinars, that's the thing. You know, you go in his course, you know, you do a webinar yourself, and nobody comes." You know, everybody sells you stuff, and they're good at selling stuff, but they're not so good at telling you all the stuff that is associated with it that you also have to do in order to make that work. They may, you know, say it kind of covered in a side sentence. So if you would sue them, you would probably find that, you know, you wouldn't necessarily win, but it doesn't necessarily help you as somebody who starts out to understand what you really need to do. And it is also different for every person because the product is different and the clientele is different. So even if they wanted to do it, they, you know, and they wanted to really tell you all the things that are involved and, you know, what's really happening. And some of them actually do. And that is one of the things I must say. If I recommend a product here, it is usually because those people have told you or have told me that yes, these are strategies that work, but you have to stay at it and will probably take years, right? They don't tell you that it's a get rich quick scheme, which I've also seen people do, and lots of them, and I don't mention them here, you know, because I even during their presentation, I figured out what was wrong with the picture, right? So just so basically that's what I'm doing. And while I was doing all these things, while I was trying out all these things in order to see if it works for me, and so on and so forth, I also continued my education, of course. You know, I continued studying coaching. I continued studying marketing, and both. You know, both are real professions. So it's not that you can learn coaching over a weekend. If somebody tells you that, that's, you know, you can get a sense of what coaching is, but if you really want to understand where people are, it will take a little bit longer than that, right? And the same thing with marketing and sales. It takes longer than just a weekend to understand what marketing and sales is because a lot of it is psychology, right? You don't become a psychologist over the weekend. It takes years to really understand where people are, and you have to understand that in order to find them there and then influence them to go somewhere else. And that is basically what marketing and sales is. So there's a lot involved that is, you know, that you have to do. So I did a lot of you know, reading. I did the course Influence, which is by Tony Robbins, which is a an online course which I thought was really really great. Again, it doesn't, only because I'm you know, I haven't had a massive amount of sales doesn't mean that the course is bad. The course actually explains things really really in a really interesting way and in a really good way. But of course, I need to get good at implementing it, right? I also did, and also looked at all kinds of other books and courses. I did the KBB course shortly thereafter, which was also very helpful and also showed me a few avenues that I hadn't seen before. I did, you know, a lot of Russell Brunson stuff. I looked at a lot of those things, which I also mentioned before. Um, in terms of the zoo tour, for example, I also did a lot of prep work. You know, I looked at the zoos that I wanted to take a look at, you know, what kind of conservation projects they had. So if I found a person there that I could interview for the podcast, which I then didn't because I didn't speak English, but if I had found a person there, I would have known something about the zoo and something to talk about and, you know, to compliment them about and to ask about. I also looked at hotels in the vicinity where I may be able to sell my services, but of course you can't do that if nobody speaks English, you know, which I didn't anticipate because before, when I went on holidays in France or Spain, everybody around there seemed to speak French or English or German, you know, and suddenly when I go there nobody speaks English anymore. It's just weird, you know. It's maybe they didn't want to anymore, but anyway. So That's just one of the things that I wanted to say. And again, so my lack of success is not a reflection of whether these things, the books and courses that I mentioned here work or not. Also, one of the things that people will tell you is if you take a course, you reduce decades into days. And that is true to an extent because they will tell you, they will show you the way to go there. But a lot of times, especially if you take the courses in the front end and not the very, very much more expensive courses that they also offer, they will just give you the solution. It's like Einstein giving you the solution of E is mc square, right? That's the theory of relativity. That may be great, but if you don't understand the whole proof to get to that equation, it won't get you anything. E is mc squared. What does that tell me? They could just as well say that the solution of the universe is 42. Like Douglas Adams says, it doesn't tell you anything because you don't know how they got there. You don't understand all the different scenarios, that they worked through in order to get there, and that they can also pull up again in their head again once they need them. Because I mean, E is mc square. Now, how do I get to what this apparently says that, if you get to the speed of light, then mass becomes infinite? How do I get there? E is mc squared. So if I isolate the mass, I do the m divided by c square and do that on the other side. So I get m is equals E divided by c square. How does that tell me that the mass is infinite? So you really have to understand this stuff. And then the twins, where that example with the twins where one, they're both 20 years old and one travels into somewhere at light speed and then comes back again, for 10 years and then turns around, comes back again, is almost the same age, while the other one has aged 20 years. How do you get that out of that equation? You don't, unless you understand the whole proof of how Einstein got to that equation. And I can tell you that proof is a book long. I know because I've bought it once. I think I left it at a bookstore somewhere in Sandhurst, and somebody is going to have a really good time reading this. But, I was curious at the time and I wanted to know. So that is kind of the same thing when marketeer tells you, certain things about marketing, or anybody, any surgeon or whatever tells you a certain thing as the outcome of all the research that he has done. If you actually want to apply it, you're going to find that you're going to have to understand all this stuff that they learned until they got there, right? So that's the same thing with marketing that says, it is helpful to know where you're supposed to be coming out so that you don't go somewhere completely different. But you also need to understand all this stuff that is around it. And that is quite difficult. So, but one thing that I did understand at that point is that what I wasn't doing, I was doing a lot of marketing. I was doing a lot of what they are telling me now are creative projects, which is not something where you get coaching clients or consulting clients the next day, but maybe 3 months, a year, or 5 years down the line, which is the same thing with podcasts, by the way. And I'm supposed to have that on the dot, publish that on the dot whenever I say, which I also don't do, which is also bad. Anyway, but at that point, I finally understood that you really have to approach people one by one, which they all also do. They just don't really talk about it that much. You realize it when they talk to you because somebody always contacts you one by one, or you go to a booth and somebody talks to you one by one. But all that marketing, it is necessary to combine that with selling one to one. And that is the one thing that employees a lot of times don't want to do because it's scary. There's people will reject you. And so anyway, so I just started DMing people. Like, people told me, you're supposed to DM people on Messenger, on Instagram, and all these LinkedIn, and so on and so forth. So I started doing that on Instagram. And on Instagram, what I found was that it was just other marketeers trying to sell me stuff. So I went on Facebook and I answered all these Facebook Messenger. Yeah, that was an interesting experience. I mean, I was lucky if it was another marketeer trying to sell me something, and I wasted a lot of time trying to, establish a relationship, and then, they tried to sell me something, I tried to sell them something, we both walked away. But what usually, 99% of the time, no matter how clear I was in the outset, It was some man from somewhere trying to date me or trying to have sex with me. And it didn't matter what I put on my website. I was so clean on the website. I never wore anything with, with where you could see a lot of, upper body and stuff. And still, it would happen all the time. And sometimes they would come out right out with it, and it was like child porn and stuff. So one time I got so upset about something that somebody sent me that I put a little post on Facebook about the organization Operation Underground Railroad, which is an organization by ex-CIA agents who actually free those children and get the people who do it arrested. And I got a few less. After that, I also radically reduced the number of my Facebook friends, which was like 4,500 or something at the time, and I'm now at 1,600, and that's only because I gave up at some point. But that was not the experience that I had expected from what I hear from all these marketeers. They all say, oh, yeah, you get into a relationship with people and then they get interested in your products and then you talk about your products and you sell something. Yeah, didn't work for me at all. I mean, not even once. So, oh yeah, and then the only times when I wasn't hit on or another marketeer tried to sell me something was then I was then accused of spamming people. Even if I was actually really interested in, what they were doing, and then I would talk about me, then I would suddenly be attacked because they had been spammed by people so many times, and then the GDPR had just come out, which is, by the way, probably not the best idea right now, the GDPR. I mean, some people get upset about being contacted by marketeers, but if you have a lot of new entrepreneurs out there, they will either fall into traps that the GDPR lays because it is just so, it basically affects everything. But also, some or a lot of them, if they know about the GDPR, will not do anything anymore with regards to direct selling. They will only do marketing like I did, and that doesn't get you anywhere. And a lot of these new entrepreneurs may actually have something really valuable that they could give other people, but they won't because of the GDPR. So that's just an aside. Anyway, so I then asked for help in certain forums, and I think it was Gary Vee one time that I just asked, guys, how do you do this? Especially if you're women and you don't just sell to other women, because that is not necessarily my clientele. How do you do this that you don't get into these conversations and waste all your time basically on conversations that will never get you anywhere and that also make you feel like you have to have a shower at night, right? And then the best thing was then that I was then attacked by a guy who told me that I was subconsciously attracting the abuse. That was when I then decided, okay, maybe DMing is not the way in. Let's try another way. So I tried another way. At that point, I was kind of frustrated with the whole thing. So I thought, okay, maybe it would be a good idea if I would do a money job at that point, one in the animal field, with people who do rescue animals, who probably have a good network with other people who also rescue animals. You get insider information into the newest things, into the newest techniques, maybe also of how human and animal conflict can be mitigated. You will get insight into the newest medical information and stuff. So I was looking for something like that, and I got an offer that was sounded too good to be true. I mean, I was almost making as much money as a lawyer in an investment bank in that job, which was weird, So, but it sounded exactly like what I wanted to do. It sounded as if the person was really connected and was really caring. So I tried that, and yeah, it was too good to be true. She's doing the animals would otherwise be dead if they weren't there, but it wasn't for me. But on the way back then, because I had, I'd driven from Spain to Switzerland to do that job, and frozen all kinds of things off because it was in January. And so I then turned back around again and went back to Spain with my bunch. And on the way, I thought, okay, I've been attacked quite a lot by people who had an issue with me expressing love for some reason, even if it was totally innocent love and it was totally, they always had to send something towards me that was, that at least I interpreted it as really aggressive. And I didn't understand why. So, I thought, okay, if every time I write something that is loving or that is nice, I get a response like this, I will never do that anymore, because I've started finding this resistance inside of me that every time I even thought about love, I thought I was doing something wrong, the wrong thing. And I'm not talking about, having sex with somebody. I'm talking about loving towards somebody, loving towards a child, being loving towards, anything basically. So I really didn't understand what was going on, but I thought, okay, I have to go the other direction. I can't completely retreat and not love at all anymore just because I think I'm going to be punished every time I just mention the word. So I also realized that there's so much love out there. It's not just about men or about, relationships and that, but a lot of people think it's just about this, or it's just about, their relationship with their parents, or it's just about, there's so much love out there. So I thought, okay, I'll do a love challenge. I'd seen a lot of marketeers doing challenges out there, and I didn't actually connect it to anything I was selling, which was also the mistake at the time, because I later, which comes in the next episode, found out about challenges and how to structure them in the way that you can actually sell something. I just did the challenge. I had done a plastic challenge here before, on the beach, pick up 10 pieces of plastic every day. So I thought I'll do a love challenge, and I'll just publish something every day, something about love every day, and it doesn't matter what kind of love, whatever comes up. It was probably one of the best things I've ever done for myself. I am hopefully it is also helpful for people out there. It is available on my website, which is www.nevelle.co.uk. That's Nevelle. It's like Neville, just all E's. And if you go down the page and click on one of those icons, like the blog item, for example, you get to the normal page, and then somewhere I think under education there's the love challenge. And I every day, almost for a month, I picked up things that I loved, and it was incredibly eye-opening how many beautiful things there are out there. And that may actually be very helpful for people at the moment if they are negative, or they see all the problems. If you take a look at everything that's around you, that's actually still beautiful, that you can actually still love, be it nature, be it adventure, be it your mate, be it your friends, be it your parents, be it, some of these things are going to be easier to love than others. But it was actually one of the best things, and it's also something that I can direct people now to help them with. If I find somebody who has broken heart, for example, and thinks that all love has gone out of the world, maybe just by reading a few of these things, and some of them came out of situations that weren't, the most pleasant ones for me at the time, because I had some challenges during that month. Um, Maybe they'll see that some of this is in their life as well. So it was one of the nicest things of the whole thing. Um, right, and so the next thing that I did was affiliate marketing. And that was one of the best things I ever did. Not because I sold, millions of dollars, but because I saw how some of the top people, it was Tony Robbins and Steve Graziosi, who sell billions online, how they structure a product launch, what they do, what the numbers are. And I realized I had a completely wrong picture of how this whole marketing thing should be working and how much money should produce what. It was so helpful, and also how they thought, and every time something didn't work, how they would, restructure things, how they would structure the talk, which looks so easy. It was so interesting because we were sent behind we could actually look behind what they were doing. We would get access to all their marketing materials and see how they would use it themselves, and, the schedule of when to post what. It was incredibly helpful. It was also very helpful for me to see that it wasn't me, it wasn't my marketing material that was wrong, why I wasn't selling, but that there was something wrong with me getting to the audience, that there was a disconnect at that point. It wasn't my videos or my copy. It may also be that, I don't know. But it wasn't that, because other people with the material that they were given sold, I don't know how much. And, I wasn't really very successful with it. Although I had all the perfect materials and perfect funnel, perfect videos, two people who are world famous, and it still didn't sell. And that is later I found out, about this whole Facebook algorithm that basically makes sure you don't sell, right? And nobody sees what you're, putting out there, which I didn't know at the time. At the time, I thought if I put something on my timeline, thousands of people will see it, and that's apparently not the case. But also, I realized I had to double down on my perfect client again, which I had done a couple of times before, but never really figured out. And I got closer and closer to who my perfect client is, which I understand much better now than I did at the time, which was really, really helpful. One of the things that is really difficult with the whole perfect client thing is they tell you different things about this, right? They tell you fall in love with your audience, not with your product. Okay, then somebody else tells you, well, your product, you don't have to change your product, you just change your marketing towards the audience. Okay, and then others tell you, you don't create a product at all, you just find your target audience first, and then find out if a product that you think would sell by trying to sell it to them, and then when they buy it, then you create the product. Apparently some people do this. Well, it's not really my approach, but so that is kind of a thing that I probably struggle a little bit more with, because I mean I do have certain products. I do love my audience, and I think I think the matching process I'm still going to have to work out a little bit more. But I do think there is a real need for employees who want to become entrepreneurs, because they're going to have to, even if they are not realizing it now. A lot of people are going to have to in the future, because they are going to lose their jobs again, not just COVID-19, which may come again now. The next wave is apparently ahead already, and but also digitalization, marketing, automation, and so on and so forth. And a lot of people get older, older and older. They get 120, and if somebody retires at 55, what is he going to do? Wait for his death for 65 years? I mean, finding a new job in another company is getting more and more difficult the older you get, also because you don't necessarily want to work for a guy who's 30 years old and who doesn't have your experience. And in certain areas, that is going to be what happens to you. So it's much better to do your own thing. But for that, you have to then figure out the sales and marketing. And then, you've got like things like GDPR that make it really difficult. So there's a whole dynamic right now, I think, that not only I have to work through, but that is why I'm so transparent about the problems that I have, that other people who know how to fix this stuff can actually fix it so that other people don't have the issues that I'm having right now, right? Because this is a matter of life and death, literally, for some people, because some people will find that if nobody buys their services, maybe because they didn't understand that this Facebook algorithm thing, for example, they think that they're useless, and some people will take their lives. Suicides go up significantly when people are out of work. Anyway, so I decided that this whole thing, didn't really work for me all that well, so that I had to go back into my perfect client. And I thought, okay, how do I find my perfect client? Online it doesn't seem to work with the DMing thing doesn't seem to work. So I thought, how did I used to find perfect clients? And usually what I find is if I'm in a room with people, I don't have a problem to get them to hire me. You know, the interviews that I've been in, I mean, some of them may have been fixed, and some of them may have had to hire me because somebody else required them to. You know, that was kind of my feeling after the interview, because I was really surprised that I got the job. But initially, that was certainly not the case. And I'm pretty good at interviews. I'm also pretty good at on stage. When I used to be in shows and stuff, people would come to me afterwards and they would want to talk to me, and they would even want to have my autographs and stuff. So I thought this is probably the best way in. And two different things that I can do here, which will not take away business from Spanish people, is I can provide certain shows to English speaking and German speaking tourists, which other people don't do here. They don't provide anything for English speaking or English speakers or German speakers. So why don't I do that? Right. So I created a show, which was a mixture between coaching and, kind of a coaching presentation and a musical. And I created that. It was a lot of fun, and I practiced it, and I was ready to deliver it. And I even found somebody here who was really upset when I wanted to go to other hotels with it, and they wanted me to do it there. So, I put out all the advertising materials here. And then I also offered a nature walk in the local nature reserve, not necessarily to do a talk about the nature reserve itself. It was just through the nature reserve, because otherwise I would have needed a permit, but which also went into, life coaching and meditation stuff, and also had some exercises with it. So I started with that, and I actually got my first client, and she came back, and everything started working. I thought, okay, if I get more clients into this, I can go to more hotels, I can go into more areas, and then offer it locally. And then maybe, people are going to come in, and then COVID-19 hit. And of course, once COVID-19 hit, all the English and German tourists went, and they haven't come back. There are some Spanish tourists have come back, but they only speak Spanish, and I don't speak Spanish well enough. And the whole point was to not take, customers away from Spanish speaking people, but to produce something for English speakers and German speakers, so that more of them would come here, and more of them would stop on the way here, which would also then bring more customers to the Spanish speakers, right? So unfortunately, that didn't work out. So I thought, okay, fine. If I'm stuck here, I'm gonna have to go back to online marketing again. So I used COVID-19 then to section my audience, which is something that was recommended in one of the courses, KBB, for example. That you section your audience. You find, because you have to get around the GDPR, and you also have to get around people thinking that you're spamming them. So what is basically recommended by marketeers, to get around this, to still get customers somehow, is to connect with people, find out what their interests are, and then you section them into different categories. Like, for example, for me, it was, people who are win-win situations, others who are good for coaching, and then you invite those people into certain groups that you have, and there you then sell them, which of course now leads to a lot of people getting upset on Facebook, because they're being befriended by people whose only purpose is to get them into the group so they can sell them, which is even worse than what you had with the GDPR before, without the GDPR before, where somebody just called you and told you, okay, I want to sell you something, which is at least straightforward. Nobody's trying to pretend they're your friend, they're your best friend, and then you realize that, they just want your money. And yeah, I do understand, it's not just they just want your money. If somebody has a good service to offer, which I think I have too, then I do want to provide value, and I do really care for the person that I provide that for. But it's a different thing than a friendship. It's not going to be for free. And that's a thing that is maybe also disconnected between Americans and Europeans in a way, because Americans see that much more fluid, I think, in some ways. At least that is my experience of the culture than Europeans. In Europe, at least where I was with my friends, you don't charge your friends for anything. You just give it for free. So telling somebody that you're their best friend on Facebook and then selling them something is just, kind of weird. But anyway, so I'd never got to that issue, because I figured out that all the people on Facebook, basically, or almost all the people on Facebook that I had as my friends, were not my customers. They were not my perfect clients at all. They were not my clients at all. Not only did I have all these different kinds of people, I mean, there was everything in there between, there were pimps in there, there were people who wanted to sell child porn in there. The theory that I had been sold by marketeers was that good marketing is basically attracting the clients you want while repelling the ones you don't want. And with the posts that I had put in, I thought that is what I was doing, because I clearly said what I believed, and what I didn't believe in. So I thought only those people who agree with me will be on my site. No, it did not work out that way. So I went through everything, and at some point, you know, again, I threw out about 2,500 simply because I didn't want to spam them then with stuff, and because I really saw that a lot of times our values really conflicted in a lot of ways that I didn't think was a very good idea to, it's not that, it's not that I can't love them or that I can't, but they weren't my client, so I wouldn't put them on Facebook because they are my client. They weren't my perfect client. They would probably not want what I have to sell. But also on a friendship kind of level, I don't think that would have clicked necessarily. And I certainly don't want to have a pimp on my side who then gets access to, my other friends and stuff. So yeah, so that was an interesting experience. And so I was at square one again. And so the next thing that I did will come in the next podcast. So I next tried LinkedIn. I found about challenges. I read another marketing book, which was very interesting, and then showed me the whole Facebook algorithm thing. I started a podcast, which is this one, and also posted things on YouTube, which this one is going to as well. And thought about looking for a money job again, which was kind of killed by COVID-19 again, because money jobs, are also pretty scarce at the moment. And then I went back to the basics, and I'm looking at the RMT Mastermind right now, which is going into building a business. So if any of this resonated with you or any of this was interesting to you, please do subscribe, and please do your family and do tell your family and friends. And if you know anybody who would need coaching, for example, simply to set goals, obviously I'm not going to offer them to coach them how to become an entrepreneur. This is all about, this whole podcast is all about what not work, what doesn't work. Once I figured out, how it really works, then I will coach that. But that's obviously not what I'm coaching right now. But what I am good at is, change management, and also certain coaching techniques on how to get through a time like this without trying to kill yourself. How you can stay positive and still see the good things around you, and still look for new things, and analyze things without flipping out, right? And there are a few, really, really helpful coaching techniques that I could send them towards. Also, losing weight and so on and so forth. I've done that before as well. So anyway, so if you enjoyed this, I hope you enjoyed this. And remember, it's never too late.